Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report, a company update from Kootenay Silver. We are going to be recapping some recent drill results that were announced on November 19th from the Columba Project. 4 holes in total, part of that 20,000 meter drill program. These 4 holes tested 3 different areas, different veins on this general vein corridor: the I vein, the D vein, and the B vein. I'm going to post a figure from the news release. It's the plan map view that shows the location of all these different veins and a lot of the drilling that the company has already completed. We are chatting with Jim McDonald, President and CEO of Kootenay Silver. Company is traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol KTN and on the OTC markets under the symbol KOOYF. Now, Jim, break down these 4 holes for us. The headline of the news release says that you're expanding known mineralization, but again, these drill results tested a whole lot of different areas for just 4 holes being released. So explain what areas were really expanded with this news release, please.
Yeah, so really great results. We've been putting out a lot of results in what we call the D vein, and now this is a different set of veins, two different set of veins. What is like a B, as in Bob veins trend, which is a kind of a corridor because there's a set of parallel veins across probably 75 meters of width or 100 meters of width, 3 or 4 different veins probably, and one of them is the extension of the historic F vein. And that's where we got this incredible hit in hole 174. There were 3 zones in there. And the big hit was on we call it the B2, which is the extension of the old historic vein south, going southward. Wide interval, like we're talking 41 meters of core length. That's almost 30 meters of true width of 233 silver. It's an excellent grade over that kind of width. And inside of that was there was 4 meters of core length with 1,100 grams per ton. And the high in that hole was 3 kilos. Beautiful hole, great widths, great grades. Those kind of widths and grades can add a lot of ounces quickly. But also, what's important when you get good widths and good grade and good widths and high grade, these are what we call quality ounces. Quality ounces are ounces that have the potential to be mined at a high margin. When you on your vein systems, you're mining underground typically, and the wider the vein, the better for you because it impacts the cost. So you can imagine a lot of veins are 1.5 meters in Mexico, that kind of width around there. And the amount of time it takes you to drill and blast one round is the same amount of time that you could drill and blast 10 meters of vein if you had it. So now you can maybe appreciate the impact and cost there. So just really exciting to see that. And then there were 2 other veins that we hit on the way down to that. One we think may be a parallel vein to this that looks pretty consistent. We hit it in a number of other holes before, but now we have enough holes to start connecting the dots. And one of these earlier holes hit an interval there of it was something like 13 meters of over 400 grams per ton with a 700-gram core to that, over 7 meters of core length. So really, nice zone. And this particular hole hit it again, not as big of a higher grade and width, but still hit it, and up to half kilo over a narrow width. And so it's showing some consistency. So it's typical in these veins to keep in mind they pinch and swell. So they'll have fat zones and thin zones. And you can see your grade change like that too. We see this internally in the B vein as well, where you get areas that just pinch down to a narrow and the grade's not as good, and then they open up quite rapidly. And so this release is just showing the potential opening up in completely different areas in the D vein where we've really been concentrating. Then one of the holes was drilled to depth on the D vein under one of our best intercepts. One of our best intercepts is what we call hole 125, and it's fairly deep. It's one of the deepest ones, and we went 130 meters underneath that, deeper. And we hit the vein, but it was literally dissolved by acidic mineralizing fluids because it was a calcite carbonate vein. So what we hit was a cavern, and that's not unusual in these vein systems either. You can expect to hit that. We have seen caverns elsewhere, and we saw a small cavern on that hole 125 um, that I just referenced. And in that hole, we had almost 10 meters at 1,700 grams per ton silver. So we took this cut in hole 175, 130 meters deeper yet again, hit a 12-meter wide zone. So what it means is, well, hey, the structure's nice and wide and strong there. So go deeper again and go beside it, find where the cavern ends and just continue drilling. So quite exciting. And then the third thing is on what we call the I vein. We went in deep into an old hole there because we had a earlier intercept from previous drilling going back a couple years that was pretty interesting. It was over 5 meters of medium grade, 146 grams per ton. But then it hit an old mine opening, an old stope where it had been mined. So obviously they took the high grade zone out of that. But we never got through the old mine. We went back in, we were able to cross it and continue drilling. So we had a 1.5 meter gap there. So that was probably pretty high grade they took out. And then we found another 10 more meters beyond that, grading 159 grams up to half a kilo over a narrower length of about a meter. So this zone is adjacent to the old mine, had a little bit of mining on it, not too much, but we've hit some intercepts there over narrower widths into the kilo range. So this thing is really open for expansion. It's very little drilled, and we're seeing some very strong alteration there, which means that it's just what was literally a hotter zone. So maybe an upwelling feeder zone there. So another thing that we need to explore and expand on.
Well, Jim, all three holes very interesting. Hitting the I vein, that cavern that you hit at the D vein. But I want to circle back to hole 174 because that's really the one that stands out to me in this press release. And just talk about something we were talking about off mic, and that is that with this B vein, hitting these three different zones, the possible parallel vein to B, and then also this unnamed hanging wall vein, three different zones. But then that really wide pocket of mineralization you mentioned, and then some high grade areas within it up to 3 kilos for over 1 meter. But even the 4 meters at 1,100 grams per ton silver is impressive. But having that wide envelope, and like you were saying, making it easier to mine because you have 40 meters of mineralization, I guess talk about complexity and how complexity in mining is good, complexity in geology is good, and even the idea that the D vein and these B veins are kind of converging into a really hectic area geologically, but that's where all these fluids are squeezing into.
Yeah, so you really like to see these complications and a lot of varied history on a property. The more mineralizing events and the more things that happen, the better chances you had for good deposits have been deposited, and the big ones usually have a lot of complications to them and a lot of different things happening and in terms of the kind of alteration, the strength of it, the structures you see. In general, you want to see complicated geology. You want to see a lot of mineral events over time, and we certainly have that. And there's multiple veins here showing up. Many of them don't even come to surface, so it takes a while and some drilling to be able to connect the dots and see where they go and how they link up from hole to hole. But we just keep hitting these new veins, new hits, and it's a challenge to put it all together, but that's a great challenge. It's exactly what you want. You want to be hitting a lot of things, and then you got to figure out how they all join. And so it's just an indication of how strong the system is, and that's always a great indication that hey, this thing really had the strength to deposit a lot of ounces in the order of sort of what we've been dreaming about here. So yeah, I don't know if I was very clear on that, but it's just great to see a lot of different veins. Many of these aren't even coming to surface, so that's more opportunity. The more diversity you see in it, complexity you see in it, and the more veins, the better opportunity for having a quite a large resource in this project.
So, Jim, again, looking back to that plan map, all these different veins that we've been talking about, we spent a lot in recent interviews on the D vein. but with some of these veins, how they intersect the other veins. Is there a central area here where you have seen the best, the highest grade, the longest width, the most consistent type of results?
So far, that is the D vein. It's got the best grade and width going for it, and it's got an awful lot of strike on it now, over a kilometer, about 1,200 meters. And we've now tested it with this last hole 175 down to, that would have been about 1,400 meters above sea level. And at surface right above that is you're at around 1,850 meters above sea level. So, and that's a very tip-top edge of the vein system. Above that, you're almost completely out of it, although you can follow that structure. So we see about 400 meters vertical height on this vein system so far, which means through the whole project, you can expect to see that. So it's the strongest vein so far. It might be sort of the center of the heat system, but this latest work we've done on that I vein to the north has hit some alteration that is just incredibly strong. It was very hot there. So it's not absolutely clear, but we can say that thus far that D vein is the main structure for us because of the consistent grade and excellent widths we're hitting across it.
Well, and Jim, we were talking a little about this in the last call, but you've also kind of found there's this line in the sand, so to speak, that if you go down below that at depth, you're seeing the grades increase and you're seeing a big change to the grade profile. Maybe to speak to that, it seems like your team has kind of dialed it in here and figured out where the mineralization starts to really increase as far as the amount of resources you could bulk up down there at depth. So, will you be doing more drilling at depth to fill in some of those areas that don't have as much color on them yet?
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. So this vein system is just a classic example of epithermal veins, and it's almost entirely preserved and intact. So we see the thing right from the very top of the system where you don't have any silver, right into the high grade zones, and we haven't found the bottom yet. That's what we don't see yet. So it was controlled by kind of a temperature pressure in general, these vein systems, and metal is dropped at a certain level. Above that level, you don't have it. And so that level for us, we're calling it a grade line. It's roughly around 1,750 meters above sea level. And so you want to be deeper than that elevation. And above that, you're probably not going to have much. You do have erratic good hits above that, but in general, that depth and deeper, and that hole 25 with that almost 10 meters of 1,700 grams per ton that we look to deepen with hole 175 there, that hole is down around 1,500 meters above sea level. And so now we got a hole that's around 1,400 meters, hit a cavern, but that's still the structure. It's still going. And so that's great news. And then you mentioned a few times now these veins converging. Well, that's typically a really great place to look in veins, where they two veins meet, because it just opens up more fluid pathway that breaks the rock more. It opens it up better. And so when you got these hot fluids pumping in the earth, they need a place to go and they have to have openings to travel in. And so where two structures come together tends to break the rock better and open things up more. So those are good areas to be. Our hole 164, where we had a 98 meters over 200 grams there and 38 meters of 358 grams in hole length, that is very close to the intersection of the B and D structures. So that's a great place to look. Another good place is when you're following the vein where they take zigs and zags. So it's going along in a straight line and all of a sudden makes an S or a Z move on on the trace of that vein. It's a wiggle in the vein. And those areas tend to be dilational zones. So they pop the rock open and create bigger spaces for the fluid. Those are also good spots to look.
So, Jim, this year, 20,000 meter drill program. You had a smaller program last year. I know you have big plans to drill even more meters here, but with all this drilling, with all these different areas that you're drilling, when do you start to focus in on certain areas to build resources and show maybe economics around I know it wouldn't be the whole area here that we're talking about, but at least some section of what you've drilled already.
Well, on the D vein with this program, what we're working on is the majority of the drilling is going to that D vein on creating a grid pattern across it with holes spaced roughly 100 meters apart from each other. And that helps you start to build and define a resource. And really, what it's doing at the same time, and what the main objective right now is, let's find the limits. And so 100-meter step outs in a vein is a pretty good step out. It's fairly aggressive. And we've done 200-meter step outs and 250-meter step outs in this program and still hit very aggressive step outs on a vein, especially when you can't see it at surface on the areas we drilled. So, yeah, this program will first of all look to find the limits. And I don't even know if we're going to find the limits on the D vein yet on this program because we're going to have need some deeper holes, it looks like, because we're still open. And that 100 meters will give you enough data likely for a resource estimate. And then we're trying to do the same thing on the B vein. And then the F vein, we already have enough holes in that historic vein to be able to do an estimate. So it's all building up towards that. There's so much to drill here and so many other targets as well to tackle. So this 20,000 meter program that we're finishing up this year is just the beginning of what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, Jim, it seems like doing 100-meter step outs and continuing to hit and hit, you eventually need to go back and put some tighter spacing between those before you'd really start working on the resource or any economics on it. So, still a lot of drilling to come, probably in future drill programs. But because we've talked so much in the past about the D vein and the B vein, and even initially the F vein, we haven't spent a lot of time on the I vein. And you said that that hole really impressed you, that hole 24017. So, it looks like on the plan map that that is actually the I vein is running into the F vein. So it's one of those things again where it looks like they kind of are perpendicular to each other. But talk to us about this I vein and why the team got so excited about this recent hit.
Well, it showed really good width potential there. And we know there's good grade along that structure from previous work and also from some historic mining. So we're talking about where veins join. That one hits the historic vein F. And in that area, old data, old reports, and we're talking about 120-year-old reports, talk about that zone being really wide there. They did some mining like where those two come together. So it really opened up. But it's very consistent. We can trace that thing along surface for about 600 or 700 meters. And there's a lot of complicated geology on it we don't see elsewhere. And we see in some holes different style alteration, which is more of a silica replacement that we don't see anywhere else. So there's something odd and special happening along that structure. And we've hit some very nice grades on some early holes there in the kilogram range. So it's just very under drilled. Geologically, a lot of strong indications there, and we need to follow up in that. It could be one of these areas where we get a surprise and a different, maybe a different style of mineralization entirely just because of what we're seeing so far. It looks strong geologically. It's just a great target.
So does that mean you need to step out from that hole? Because, like the news release says, you intersected over 25 meters of continuous silver mineralization, but there weren't huge length in terms of higher grade intervals here. The historic holes had some better results in them. So how do you go about following up on this hole to, I guess, intersect some higher grades?
We'll be going to laterally along strike. We have to do a lot more drilling and then add at depth. My feeling here is that we might have to go a fair bit deeper. And remember, I was saying these veins pinch and swell. So laterally they do that, and vertically they do that. And so you can see something looks like it's closing off, and you can drill 25 meters further along where something pinches down to less than a meter, and boom, it'll open up to 5, 10 meters wide. And so we're definitely going to be looking deeper here for sure, because it so far we've have a few holes scattered across about 500 meters in length there on that I vein and open along the strike and wide open to depth. So a lot of potential there. And just geologically, like I said, looks very interesting for a bunch of reasons.
Well, Jim, I kind of want to scan back and kind of do a big picture view of the whole Columba project because when you think about it in context with the other company projects, and we should remind people listening, the company has four projects. You have La Negra, Promontorio, La Sagara, and Columba. Columba seems to be standing out as the flagship project because of this vein density at all these veins, the D, the B, the F, the I. There's even other veins we haven't even discussed yet. But when I was talking with people just recently at a conference in New Orleans and I mentioned some of the success from Kootenay, a lot of people were thinking of things in context of maybe the more bulk tonnage style deposits that you have on some of the other projects. I guess just from a big picture, encapsulate all of this drilling and all these veins on Columba and what it means for this project and how this project could kind of mass up in a different way.
Well, it's the grade's the difference. So these other sort of, you call them bulk mineable, meaning they're lower grade, kind of disseminated, if you will, open pit constrained. So different style altogether. And in the case of Columba, your classic vein system, you got high grades, and grade works in any silver price. So that's really important. I mentioned earlier about the quality of ounces. So we're hitting what look like real quality ounces here. And so now working on building up bulk size ounces in the system. And then we're having these veins with just incredible widths to them, just really good widths. So the width and the grade are like a double whammy. That's the best you can have. That's what you want. And so it stands out because of the grade. And at the same time, it's got great potential for a vein system for a project that could host 100 million ounces or even some multiples of 100 million ounces. So both those things are really important. And that's why we're focused there. And not very many programs where you are each hole you're drilling almost is adding ounces to whatever you're doing. So it really stands out. It hasn't suffered any erosion, so to speak, of significance. So whatever was deposited here in terms of silver is still sitting there to be discovered. And that's what we're doing. So it's exciting from a number of aspects. It's almost entirely preserved from erosion. It is high grade, and you're getting some really great widths, and the potential for size is is excellent as well.
So, Jim, still a lot of drill results to come. You were telling us that you're about 15,000 meters through this 20,000 meter program. There are assays at the lab that we are waiting for. Take us through how much money the company has to complete this program and then what it sets you up for next year. Undoubtedly, more drilling.
Yeah, we know now we're going to need a lot more drilling. We're in a great place financially. When this program's all done, we'll have between $3.5 and $4 million still in the bank, and so it doesn't put any immediate pressure on us. And once we get all the results in, we'll have a look at what next steps are. And we're hoping there's enough there for a maiden resource, but maybe the answer is that we need to keep drilling because things are so wide open still. So let's see what all the results come in like first.
All right, Jim, thank you very much for the update here. Again, Jim McDonald, President and CEO of Kootenay Silver. Click that link in the show notes to visit the company's website, read over that full news release, send us any questions you have for Jim. Jim, thanks for the update today.
Yeah, thanks, guys.